marijuana dispensaries still operating illegally. A warning from the City of Vancouver's chief license inspector.
We haven't given anyone a specific deadline. Instead, we're actively working with them to come up with a reasonable timeline by which they can close.
When do you anticipate starting to make those arrests that are on the table?
I think at this point we're going to continue to monitor the situation, continue to have the conversations to encourage voluntary compliance like Cannabis Culture, and if locations are not willing to comply, then we will look at taking those next steps.
So under the current rules, all recreational pot shops in BC must have provincial and municipal approval to operate and can only sell weed bought from the BC Liquor Distribution Branch.
Joining us now in studio is the co-owner of Cannabis Culture, Jodie Emery. Thanks, Jodie, for coming in this morning.
Thank you for having me.
So, I mean, you know, we know you have several locations around the city, and that location on Hastings Street near Main and Hastings is, you know, been iconic. It's been around the city for decades, really now. The brand has become, as we mentioned, synonymous with the marijuana movement. So how ironic is it that at this stage of the game, after decades of advocacy, now you're closing your doors, now that pot is legal?
It's devastating, and to sit down with 50 employees in the West End at our lounge, tell them that they're laid off, not because we're failing as a business, but because the government doesn't want us to continue being successful, that's very hard. It's professionally devastating. Personally, this is so upsetting. And then politically, to be sitting here watching as legalization is happening, but every which way we've been blocked. When the city says we just need to apply for permits, we did. And they redrew the map to exclude our first location. So we applied for our other locations, and they refused it. And they told us get a development permit, but they literally hid the link from the website until we had media reporters force them to share it with us. But in the meantime, Canopy Growth has got their development permit right next door to our Hastings headquarters. So big money and big government are coming in and trying to eliminate the pioneers and prohibition victims who created this landscape.
So you're planning to shut down 3 outlets by January 31st, and we're obviously feeling some kind of pressure from the city. But for viewers, why should viewers sympathize with your laid off workers when it is illegal?
Well, it's funny that it is illegal under legalization. Legalization years ago was supposed to acknowledge that there's a lot of cannabis, a lot of people involved. It's a peaceful, massive industry that should be allowed to operate. But under this so-called legalization in Canada, we have tough new laws, harsher penalties, more police, a brand new crackdown unit in British Columbia, and severe punishments being threatened. But what for? There's no harm being presented by these dispensaries. They create jobs, pay taxes, and just beg to be legalized. So we can't be blamed for not complying and not getting a license when the government itself refuses to license us. We've tried every which way to transition, and they block us at every turn. And we also need to remember that recreational dispensaries with government pot are very different from medical. We have an opioid crisis in this city. Studies prove that dispensaries reduce opioid deaths. So if the city really cares about reducing opioid deaths and the safer alternatives and harm reduction, they would allow dispensaries to stay open.
So on the other side of things, though, we had Mike Babbins from Evergreen, one of the first licensed pot shops in Vancouver, in on Monday, and he was saying that, you know, he had to go through all this process to get the license, and he's, you know, jumped through he jumped through all the hoops, and he's done everything right, and now he's in business, and so he wants to see some of those other pot shops that are operating illegally, like Cannabis Culture, shut down because you're taking business away from him.
Well, isn't that funny? It's all about money for him, not principles. He used to break the law himself, and now he's a turncoat. He's really a trader along with other businesses. There's a difference between being a cannabis business that goes through the process and gets the license and says, great, thank you. It's been a challenge. The government has been in the wrong, but we did it all. And there's a difference between that and being a cannabis business like these who say, we got our license, but we want everyone else to be shut down so we make all the money. That's clearly not about principles, not about access. And I agree, that is a difficult process, but don't get mad at us. Get mad at the government that creates that difficulty. Get mad at the prohibition and the regulations that he had to jump through, not the other people who are suffering persecution. If he really cared about providing access, he wouldn't be asking for law enforcement to eliminate access.
But this is a common business practice. Any business owner has to go through a process and receive the proper license. Why is that would be an exception for your business?
Well, we're not looking for an exception. Now, if I wanted to open up an alcohol store and sell you guys alcohol, which causes crime and assault and rape and death every single day, I could do it. I don't need a $30,000 permit. I don't have a 300-meter limit. If I want to sell alcohol or tobacco or any drugs across from a school, I can get a license, no problem. But what they're doing is a prohibitive approach. The City of Vancouver said years ago, when I sat here 3 years ago, they said, we want to eliminate 90% of businesses. Why? What other successful business would be eliminated? And again, we're supposed to acknowledge that legalization should allow these businesses to exist. It's not meant to eliminate and punish people. We need more access, a safer choice. If I can get beer at my barber shop and coffee shop because the City of Vancouver says I can, why can I not get a safer choice that prevents addictions in the first place, safer than alcohol, safer than opioids, safer than most everything the government allows? Cannabis dispensaries do no harm. They literally save lives.
No, so it sounds like you have a very different idea of what, legalization would be if, you were sort of in charge of it. But I want to shift gears a little bit and ask you about the price of marijuana under the legal system. So there's this new report from Stats Canada that says the price has been going up since legalization, that people are paying almost 50% more than they would be on the black market. Is that fueling the black market?
Of course. I mean, prohibition prices, the government doesn't want to eliminate this industry. They want to cash in on it. So instead of allowing the existing industry to operate, they're trying to eliminate it and replace it with prohibition prices. And it's pretty ironic when they talk about supply shortages. There's not enough cannabis, and we have to increase the price because there's not enough. Again, we have enough cannabis. We're here in Vancouver, British Columbia. We've supplied cannabis to the country for decades. There is not a shortage of cannabis. There's only a shortage of stock market pot, government pot. 45 former government officials and police officers are running pot companies. They're making millions on the stock market. But when the government federally says restrict and limit access, they are doing that indeed. But guess who benefits from restricted limited access? People like the chief financial officer of the Liberal Party of Canada, who founded Canopy, and they're all cashing in big time. Meanwhile, they're asking for the rest of us to get eliminated. I'm not saying stop Evergreen, stop Canopy, don't allow them to exist. Let's have free, fair opportunities for all. But those organizations are calling for us to be eliminated so they can cash in. And we created this industry, so we should be first in line, but I would even accept an equal opportunity.
All right, well, thank you for coming in and sharing your side of things, and good luck with you with your future business practices.
We're reaching out to the city. People can call the mayor and ask for temporary licenses. The city of Gibson's just did that, so it's not impossible for the city to let us continue operating.
All right.